As characters level up in D&D, the amount of hit points they have, and the amount of healing that they have access to, begins to outscale monster damage. At first level, a character with 10 hit points can take 7 damage, but it is unusual to see a character at 10th level take 70 damage, even if they have 100 hit points. Here the framing has changed. When you're fighting rats at first level, and you take 70% of your health in one round, you think, wow, my character is really weak. But when you lose 70% of your health at level 10, you think, wow, this boss monster is pretty tough. The DM is really letting us have it. One of the effects of this is that at higher levels we start to see additional mechanics, such as status effects, petrification, and exhaustion, become the primary ways by which we challenge the player characters. I personally like the 3rd edition mechanic of having poison's damage ability scores, but it can be a bit annoying to track. Another thing we start to see at higher levels is monsters which have a puzzle or dilemma element. For example, a group of high-level adventurers might be dealing with a dragon, flying towards a nearby settlement to burn it down. Here the concern is not with how much damage the dragon can do to the PCs, but with logistics. Can the PCs stop the dragon before it reaches the settlement? Should we send someone ahead to warn the people there, even if it means splitting the party? Introducing additional mechanics and ideas is a great way to create interesting and varied encounters, but it can become more work for the DM. Designing encounters for high-level PCs often involves figuring out halfway through that the players have a simple and obvious solution to the problem that you're presenting them with, just written on their spell sheet. We want hit points to matter at high-level play, and we're going to do this in 2 ways. The first is to rethink how much damage we expect our monsters to do at higher levels, and the second we'll get to that later. So the first part is pretty simple. Just buff the damage of your monsters. Don't add additional monsters to the encounter or give them extra attacks. Just increase the amount of damage that they're dealing, and tell the players that you're doing this. Remember that a monster that deals 10 damage to a character with 100 hit points is the same as a monster that deals 1 damage to a character with 10 hit points. If you want to run an encounter where hit points are relevant, your monster should be able to do 30 to 150% of a character's total hit points in a single turn. This is not punishing to your players. They have plenty of abilities to mitigate and ignore this damage. At 5th level, rogues can use a reaction to take half damage from an attack. I bet your rogue will feel pretty cool when they just survive a hit after reducing 100 damage down to 50. The second thing that we're going to look at is a mechanic from the Book of Vile Darkness, appropriately named Vile Damage. This one is going to require more thought to implement. For one thing, your players are going to hate it. The way this mechanic works is that vile damage cannot be healed, and remains with your character until they find an appropriate way to remove it. I think the best way to treat this mechanic is not to make it very difficult for the players to remove, but to make them more cautious about taking damage. I would allow the players to remove it by taking a long rest in a temple, but not whilst they're in the dungeon. I think the original intent for this mechanic was that it would be difficult to remove, and so the monsters might only do 1 or 2 points of damage. But when we were using it, we want it to have impact, so our monsters are going to deal 30% of their damage as vile damage. I would still use this mechanic sparingly, but I think it's perfect when running higher level characters through a smaller dungeon. It just gives you a more efficient way of burning through player resources.